Hi, I'm Mike Tremont. I'm the Libertarian Party candidate in this race. I've been a police officer in the southern part of Broward County in a very diverse community the past 11 years on patrol. It's a second career for me. My first career was as a professional economist. I taught economics at Barry University, at Nova University. I taught at George Washington University, where I was in grad school in Washington, D.C. I worked as an economist for a couple of years for the White House. I worked for a couple of years for other government agencies. I'm running on a platform of police reform and criminal justice reform. I'm a big believer that we can make some changes and do some things right that'll really help turn around our communities. I'm not a big fan of this, what I consider silly and dangerous idea of defunding the police. I think the Democratic Party needs to do a better job of shouting that down. Don't like Sheila McCormick's idea of giving away money for no reason. We can't afford it. I don't consider it ethical. And I'm disappointed that more people haven't read the research on this issue that shows that we've tried this issue in the past, doesn't work. And the fact that it's not good public policy, I think, leaves her open to the lawsuit trying to remove her from the ballot. The idea that the federal government has a role here is such a profoundly bad idea that it actually explains much of what is wrong with our labor market today. We are desperately trying to get people back to work, and the federal government keeps getting in the way. Not only does the federal government not have a role, if there were a role for government, it would be at the state level. Some of these ideas are great, and some of these ideas are horrible. Minimum wage, for example, is a job killer. It explains the difference between impoverished people, people of color versus white people. It explains so much at the bottom end of the rung of the economic ladder why we have so much unemployment where we don't want it, where we can afford at least. Some of these ideas are great. Sick leave, for example. The other one you mentioned was family leave, where companies find it a good idea to negotiate, to bring in better workers. They do so. And we're moving that way as a society. I think that's a great thing, but it's not because of the government pushing us in that direction, nor should it be. Very much. This is a super important question for the future of the United States, and not just over the next several weeks, but several decades. And I would argue over the next century. We need to decide what it is that America is going to be. America is a land of immigrants. It is a culture of immigration. We need to vastly expand the extent to which we are a pro-immigration nation, to the extent to which we are a pro-immigrant nation. Bringing in more immigrants would be good for our economy, would be good for our culture, would be good for our society in almost every way imaginable. People who come to this country on average commit fewer crimes than people who are born here. They take less in terms of government resources. They contribute more on a net basis to our society. We need more of them, not less of them. There is no reason to believe that there's a particular number representing an ideal population of the United States. If I had my druthers, it would be larger than it is now. And by the way, speaking of Haitian immigrants, we need to stop discriminating against individuals who want to come to this country for economic reasons. It's one of the best reasons to come to the United States. You should not be required to demonstrate that you are seeking some sort of political asylum. Coming here for economic reasons should not be some weird black mark on your application. We should be welcoming Haitians here as rapidly as from any other place. I think it is true, as a couple of folks have said, that we're all in agreement about how important this issue is. Indeed, it's going to become more important as our environment warms up over the next several decades and 100 years. But I do believe that our approach to this has been fundamentally incorrect. The more government involvement that we get, the bigger our problems have become. We have water shortages out west because of government intervention on the pricing side. And all over the United States, government intervention has precluded investment by private companies bringing new types of technologies to bear, which of course is what we're going to need in the future. We're going to need creative solutions to desalinization, to sustainable technologies to provide clean water. To the extent to which we have a need for government coordination, for government intervention, must be at the state level. The EPA is a well-intentioned organization, but the amount of money that they have put into the wrong direction over the years is absolutely staggering. Florida as a state is better equipped to figure out where the investments need to be. The private sector would be even better at it. Sheila had mentioned, yes, correctly, that we need to hold accountable people who drive up the cost by creating pollution in the first place. We need to figure out how to price out those costs and force the polluters to bear those costs rather than government across the population. The correct vote is no, even if you believe in the good things that the Lewis Act is trying to accomplish. The vote should still be no, because these have to be handled at the state level. Having said that, most of this debate is driven by a misunderstanding by both parties of what the problems really are. Seems to me that the Republican Party is being driven by a lot of misperceptions and fears, and the Democratic Party is being driven by a lot of misperceptions and fears, just different misperceptions and different fears. Were this not so ridiculously politicized, the parties would be able to work together and come to some conclusions that everyone could agree on. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but if it is going to happen, it's going to happen because we leave it up to the states to work out reasonable solutions. The answer, of course, is that they should not be regulated, but much has to change. The reason we have so many problems today is because the federal government in 96 intervened in this market and decided that these social media platforms, which looked very different in those days, right, needed to be allowed to censor and be protected from people suing them in the courts. This was a horrible decision. We knew at the time that it could lead to problems, but everyone wanted these social media platforms to have the right to pull down pornography. And so we passed these laws to allow them to censor and be protected from lawsuits. And now it has just gotten way out of control. I would change things profoundly. I would say that if you're going to be a social media platform, then you have to act like a social media platform. You can't censor people any more than we would tolerate censorship from a telephone company, right? This idea of being protected from the courts has got to stop. There are simple changes that we can make to the Communications Decency Act. These changes would return the market to where it should be, people having the right to sue when they're liable, and have the companies behave like the platforms they were always meant to be. No more censoring. I'm a big believer in vaccines. I've been vaccinated myself. I'm pro-vaccine. I just got my third shot. I recommend it for everybody. But if you get a shot because Mike Tremont thinks it's a good idea, you're a dumb person, okay? Now, I'm going to go to Washington and I'm going to represent this district. I'm not going to be any smarter when I get there than I am today. At that point, do you really want me voting on whether or not you should get vaccinated? I don't think so. When I decided to get vaccinated, I made that decision the same way every married American male should. That is, my wife told me to get vaccinated, and so I got vaccinated. Even though I'm pro-vaccine, I think it's a bridge too far when the government decides that you have to be vaccinated. In New York City now, you have to be vaccinated or you're going to lose your job. That can't fly. Right now, we have a big brouhaha between the Biden administration and, of course, and the governor in Florida. They seem to have a weird argument going on where the Biden administration says, we believe that we have the right to be so authoritarian, we can disregard the Constitution and make decisions for you. And Governor DeSantis is saying, no, you don't. I have the right to be so authoritarian I can disregard the law and tell companies what they can and cannot mandate. If an individual company wants to require of its customers or its employees that they have to wear a mask or get vaccinated, that's their business, not the government's. And thanks for this debate. Anyone who's listening to this and believes in a good conversation, who believes in pluralistic democracy, who believes in doing your hard work before entering a conversation like this, who believes in trying to represent everybody in your district, should be absolutely offended by the things that Sheila Scherflis McCormick has said tonight. The very idea that she would have somehow protection to accuse the rest of us of somehow being made uncomfortable trying to represent the interests of everyone in the district because of what we look like, I've had it up to here. I'll tell you what I look like. I look like a guy who went to school to study development economics, who has traveled the world over in underdeveloped nations to find new ways to address poverty. And I'm willing to bring a new approach to District 20.